I just want to make this quick video about 10 false beliefs that Catholics have. And I used to be self-identify as a Catholic because of what I was told as a kid and having to go to Catholic schools, which was probably because it was more a stigma to go to the public schools in the city, large city, um, private school, was Catholic. So everybody that I went to school with was either Polish, Irish, Italian, Mexican, Filipino. Obviously other people were whatever, but they were Americans. But here are the 10 top beliefs that are false that most Catholics have, like I used to have. Number 1 is that the Pope is holy and God's authority. Number 2 is that you can sin and get away with it if you go to confession. Number 3 is that saying the rosary is effective. Number 4 is that Mary, the mother of Jesus, is like God and answers prayers. Number 5 is that you can pray to saints and they hear you. Number 6 is that most people go to heaven except criminals and not non-Catholics. 7 is that Roman Catholicism is the only true religion. Number 8 is that you are a Christian. And when I say that Roman Catholicism is the only true religion, I don't mean to imply that Judaism or Islam are acceptable religions. Actually, any religion is not of God. So that's a much bigger, even though they claim to worship God, they don't worship Him the way that Jesus said God is to be worshipped. So, and that's why Jesus was sent by God. Number 8 is that you are a Christian. Number 9 is that you only sin if you break one of the 10 commandments. And that number 10 is that Peter was the first pope. So those are the top 10 that I came up with that I think are common false beliefs that people who self-identify as Catholic live by. So, but I can tell you safely now that those are not true. It's been since 2007 when I had a divine revelation and started reading the Bible. I've read most of it. I've read the entire New Testament about 7 times, maybe 8, I don't know. And then, of course, more passages, more and more, but front to back. And then the Old Testament, of course, not in its entirety, but I'm sure I will before my time on this earth is done. But most Catholic practices are anti-Christian because they do the opposite of what Jesus said to do or don't do. They do what He says don't do, and they don't do what He says do. If I could come up with an example off the top of my head, it would be, and they've got any Catholic. This video isn't for Catholics. People call themselves Catholics. In other words, like Catholic apologists, people who go to Catholic apologetic websites and they learn all the arguments against Catholicism and then they memorize them and then they spit them back out. So common things, Jesus said, call no one Father, because you have only one Father in heaven. He also said call no one Rabbi, and He said call no one Teacher. But it's funny that the 3 major religions, Catholics call their authorities Father, Jews call their authorities Rabbi, and I believe that Islam, I believe that a mullah is a teacher. I know he's supposed to be somebody with a lot of knowledge, so it would be the same thing like a rabbi. A rabbi is considered a teacher. So it's funny that Jesus would say, call no one Father, call no one Rabbi, call no one teacher, and the three major religions are all call their authorities father, rabbi, teacher. He also said don't when you pray, go into your room and pray in private. He said everything to do in private. In other words, like when you give, don't let your left hand know what the right hand is doing. Um, when you fast, don't let anyone know that you're fasting. And so that outward signs of piety um, are always against what Jesus said, because he said don't do those things. So, but nevertheless, people do that. He said when you pray, go into your room and pray in private, but he said don't repeat the same words over and over, babbling like the heathen or the pagans. And that's what Catholics do when they pray the rosary. They keep saying the same words over and over again. And I mean, it's obvious when you read what if Jesus is saying this, why did they do that? And you probably also think that the Antichrist is one guy in particular who comes in the future and starts the battle of Armageddon. And that's not true. The Pope for centuries has been considered to be the Antichrist. And I think that he's one of them, or a big part of the Antichrist system. So basically, Jesus came to show us how to live our lives to overcome the devil in this world, because in this world the devil is allowed by God to dominate, and we have to overcome in order to get to heaven. So instead of hell. So as I stated, number 6, most people go to heaven except criminals, and Jesus said famously, get off the broad road which many are on, and which leads to destruction. Instead, seek ye the narrow road which few find, which leads to eternal life. So if you're following the crowd, doing what others around you do, if you're influenced by the world, then you are most likely not going to heaven. So the default is hell. The default is not heaven. So most people who you would consider it's good probably went to hell. And there might be some people that you considered bad who might have died in prison, who went to heaven because they repented and started reading the Bible and started praying to God and developed a relationship with Christ. So that's pretty much it. That's the video. I just wanted to do those top 10 things, and I'll do another video where I'll take each one and point out, I'll prove my point that those are false beliefs.